This guy had a career. He had a writing career. And then he ruined that writing career. He absolutely demolished it. And it's all his fault. But you see, it's all just ego. It's all narcissism. It's all his understanding of his own greatness. It's all built on fallacies and mistakes. And this guy makes it worse and worse and worse as time progresses. Can you imagine? Can you imagine how awful that is? And so we have this really awful case today that I'm going to really explore. The author in question, or the writer in question, is J.M. Arlen. This happened a while back, and I think it's a great lesson for all writers, because how to ruin your writing career. How to ruin your writing career. I have you covered. Today I'll be teaching you step by step how to do it. Step number 1. Whenever you fail, make sure you throw a tantrum and you declare that writing is meaningless. There is no point to writing because I have failed with my first attempt. My first attempt. Okay, imagine you publish a book, you have your first attempt and you fail. Then you declare writing is pointless. A perspective from an author. All right? And so I'll tell you this. This is a remarkable, interesting case. So that's the first step. How to ruin your career. This guy writes a book for 7 years. On and on and on and on and on. I'll read you the particular post that he wrote. And what ends up happening is that book only sells 5 copies. 7 years of work. He only sells 5 copies. He doesn't even make $100, okay? 7 years of work, he doesn't make $100 from his book. And so he declares that writing is meaningless and it's not worth it. I'm not going to go through this again. He was doing it for the money and he was doing it for the sales. He would like to convince you that he wasn't doing it for all of those things, but he threw a tantrum instead of actually learning and behaving better. And so the structure of this is very interesting. Initially, what ends up happening is that people are very nice to this guy. They're actually supportive of him. But eventually what ends up happening is that instead of taking the criticism, he becomes a troll. He starts attacking the people. He starts disregarding the advice and he starts becoming more and more confrontational. This leads to people becoming more and more confrontational with him. Eventually, it reaches a point where they review bomb him, they insult him, they attack his character, and finally, he declares that my writing career is over. My writing career has been ruined. And so today, I'll be telling you how this guy went from having a writing career to having nothing. So much so people actually advised him to change his pen name, get a new identity. People are literally advising him to abandon his identity. That's how far it has gone. So he starts actually, writing feels pointless. This is after his first book failed. Now, keep in mind, your first book is always expected to fail. Anyway, he writes perspective from an author as if that gives him credibility. I love writing. My whole life, I've loved to write. Being able to pick up a pen, set it against a blank piece of paper, and make a world come to life is one of the most enjoyable things I have ever done. Back in 2015, I finally decided to write a full-length novel, and it came together very well. It didn't have a lot of, I didn't have a lot of experience with the writing industry at the time, but I was convinced that if I took the time to write a story that was good, I mean really good, spare no criticism on myself, rewrite every page, every word to be better, make the plot interesting, blah, 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 blah. Eventually, the money, okay? Let's talk about the money. At the bottom, you can see, I got beta readers, hired an editor, paid for an awesome cover. Oh, come on. Paid for an awesome cover? Take a look at this cover. You tell me if this is the cover that is an awesome cover. Nah, it looks like a self-published cover. Anyway, set up a website, social medias, wrote a blog, ran ads. You know, you should finish sentences anyway. I've spent $2,500 bringing my story to life and 7 years of sweat, blood and tears trying to make it perfect. And now I can't even get anyone to read it, not even my own family. Oh, astaghfirullah. Ya akhi, shu hada. Hey, look at this. My own family wouldn't even read it. 5 sales. That's what all my hard work panned out to. Apparently, that's what it all panned out to. And as I said, you know, this all starts okay, it all starts fine. You know, people initially start to actually advise him. People start to give him very, very good advice. And he doesn't seem to take it very well. And eventually things derail. On Amazon, someone writes, your description reads, this is the blurb for the story. The reviewer writes for him, unfortunately, this fails to differentiate itself from other fantasy novels I've read. It's cluttered with proper nouns and doesn't describe who our characters actually are. There is so much going on that you simply drop a teenager from our world into the mix without so much as giving context to what that means. Is this an alternate Earth, a fantasy world? I'm confused as a reader, and confusion isn't going to make me buy a book. And that is true. In fact, people are still very nice to him. They tell him about Brandon Sanderson and other authors. You know, someone says here, for example, Brandon Sanderson wrote 13 novels before he was published. He considers those 13 trunked, as they won't be widely released and were learning tools for him. There is plenty of authors who have to write a couple of books to get the hang of things. It's extremely rare for the first book written to be the first book published. And I would like to add, the first book to actually succeed, because your first book to even be traditionally published is not going to likely be your first book to succeed. Maybe it's your 20th book. Someone like Brandon Sanderson is actually an exception. His debut novel, Elantris, it actually did very well. But most authors that actually are on the caliber of Brandon Sanderson had their 7th, 8th, 10th, 20th book. For example, George R. Martin. Yeah, authors like J.K. Rowling are an exception. Most authors that are successful they're like Scott Lynch, Jim Butcher. These authors have written and written and written and written, and then they became successful. This guy is literally throwing a tantrum that is the most childish thing I've ever seen, because you do not get to do that. You do not get to throw a tantrum by the first book. Especially after you self-publish it, because remember, when a book is self-published, on average, self-published books will sell few copies. And so this guy, his book performed average for a self-published book. It actually performed average. So I don't know what he's throwing a tantrum for. He should declare it as an average book. Yeah, that's the reality about self-publishing. Most people don't want to hear it, but it is the truth. Anyway, ruler of all marmalade, I don't know what that is, but this other person writes, that wasn't a blurb, that was trying to cram a wiki page summary of the whole book the night before an assignment is due. A way better blurb is So as you can see in Reddit, initially people respond with advice, but he doesn't take that. He's more and more confrontational, and it devolves into insults. Eventually, those translate into ruining his brand. And as you can see, the Crystal Keepers in Goodreads gets review bombed. J.M. Arlen, the Crystal Keepers, you know, the first in a saga that will span across the stars, whatever, blah, 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 yeah. It actually gets review bombed. And people dunk on this book so hard. And he doesn't take that very well. He does not absolutely take it very well, and he goes back to Reddit and he declares in the writers for subreddit, my writing career is ruined. I got another bad review on Goodreads. They obviously only read the part of the sample and rushed out to write a bad review. He puts an emoji there. I think we all need to take a step back as writers and just say that if we DNF, do not finish, then DNR, do not read, then do not review. Reviews should be reserved for people that actually read the book. No one can change my mind on that one. As you can see here, this has actually 0 likes, but it has 238 comments. That is when you know things have really gone downhill. In Reddit, if you see a highly commented, post or thread, but it has no likes or very few, this is when you know. This is when you know. Atomic Cleat actually says, I have been silently watching. Okay, you know, in Reddit, there are several types of people, several types of Redditors, right? One of those is the stalker, right? Redditors who do not post, but rarely ever post. And whenever they do, they are so shocked. You have to shock them. You have to freeze their brain with something so dumb, so inconceivable, they have to comment, okay? And so this guy has really achieved the impossible. He brought the Reddit stalking crowd out of hibernation and into the public. I have been silently watching your posts on here and shaking my head. Dude, you are literally shooting yourself in the foot with a machine gun. Stop. Just stop. If this is your first book, take it down and relaunch it in a few months with a different pen name, and never ever act like this as an advocate for your book. What is earning you bad reviews isn't your writing. It's you as a person. See, people review bombed despite not having read. Now, the author is not really wrong when he said they haven't read the book. But remember, it was him who provoked the crowd. Do not ever provoke the people. So get over whatever confrontational, know-it-all, whatever it is you have going on, and look to places like this as somewhere to get advice from peers, instead of coming here for people to pat your ego and then getting mad when that doesn't happen. The people who have given you bad reviews without reading your books are a-holes, and if you didn't think that was going to happen after how you've behaved, you don't have much forethought. This is a great life lesson for you, and hopefully for others who are quietly watching. Good luck with your writing. It takes hard work. It takes balls to get the, stalking Reddit crowd, to come out. This guy has done the impossible, okay? I see these guys every now and then, and they're always sure to remind, This guy writes, it may be wise to cut your losses at this point. With only a single book under your current pen name, creating a new one might be a good idea. Start a new series without all the baggage and see what the response is. So, maybe your writing career is ruined for your existing pen name, but that's the advantage of pen names, I guess. As you can see, people are literally advising this guy, after things devolved so far down here, to actually abandon his pen name, to abandon his identity, and to get a new one. That's how far things have gone. This is absolutely awful. That is the first step to actually ruining your writing career, okay? Throw a tantrum where you don't have to. But the other way you can ruin your writing career is actually by idealizing nonsense that society oftentimes encourages. Because this writer makes a mistake, and the mistake he's making is a very common thing that actually is encouraged in society. And it is that writers, two things. First of all, they believe that a good book is going to sell simply because it's a good book. That's not right. It's wrong. In fact, writing a book and marketing a book are completely different skills, and they are completely different fields. This is why you have the marketing experts in a publisher, the statistics guys, the guys who know the numbers, and then the writer. And this is why a publisher's job, an agent's job, is to actually get them to cooperate and to reach a good consensus for the particular product that is being pushed, that book that is being pushed, right? Yeah. And so do not confuse writing with marketing. This guy failed to actually do any effective marketing for self-publishing. Oftentimes, people that are self-publishing make the mistake that they can just do the conventional things and they'll be successful. You have to actually do more than that, because you see, you need a platform. This guy hasn't built that platform. You see, it's not just as simple when you self-publish. It's not as simple as going out, having a cover or a website or social medias. You need an existing fan base to publish to. Brandon Sanderson switches to become a hybrid author, but Brandon Sanderson already has an existing audience, and he goes on to break the, the Kickstarter record for the largest one in human history. Exactly, because he has an existing audience. George R. Martin today could actually become a hybrid author and self-publish. That's because he has a platform. A YouTuber with 100, 200,000 subscribers could do that, right? But you have to pay attention to the reality that this guy has not actually done good job. He thinks he did, and that's the thing, right? Another thing is, he made a mistake. How to ruin your writing career is to assume simply because you spent a lot of time on a book that it ought to be successful. And then to tell everyone and to throw a tantrum like he did. To be frank, because you spent a lot of time writing a book does not mean it's going to be successful. Another thing is, we should not idealize this concept of the starving artist and the slaving artist. The starving artist and the slaving artist. So the starving artist we know, but the one who slaves away is the writer who locks himself in a bunker, writes for 10 years, disconnects from society, loses loved ones, gets depression, all of that to sacrifice himself, all of that becoming a hermit in order to sacrifice himself, right, to actually write a book. And society will reward him for his great sacrifice. But that's false. It's survivorship bias. You are building your author career strategy on a survivorship bias. I know this is like very harsh, right? But you have to be very frank with yourself. You have to be very honest, very realistic with yourself. These are ways that you could absolutely ruin your writing career. Another one is obviously the Dunning-Kruger effect. This guy, I read his book, I read the first few chapters, and I've had to stop. It's really not good. It's absolutely not good. I absolutely abhorred his writing. It's not good. Yeah, he thinks he's good, but he's not. And so there is that disconnect, the dissonance, right? The lack of awareness that he doesn't know. Okay, so some people know enough to know that they don't know. This guy knows so little that he thinks he knows, simply because he has a very narrow understanding and he doesn't have a broad view of what writing is. He hasn't failed enough times. So the reality is, much like Brandon Sanderson, you're likely going to have to write many books before you get published, and even many more books before you become successful. So I hope you took something from this video, and I hope J.M. Arlen can actually go ahead and find a new identity. Become someone else. I really do advise that. I do advise that he takes people's advice and considers it and takes it as an honest critique. Do not throw a tantrum because your book didn't sell. And especially when you self-publish without proper marketing, without proper understanding of how to self-publish, and without having actually marketed the book effectively. So, yeah, I hope you took something from this video. Have a nice day.